This is Jerry, the old guy from the wood carving place, and we're on a road trip. Raider Ron and myself are visiting Dan Collins, who is a exceptional bark carver and other carvings as well, but his passion right at the moment is bark carving. So we're going to do a little interview, look at some of his products, some of the neat things that he's picked up over the years, some carving techniques and tools and so forth. And so just give you an idea how a professional bark carver operates. All right, for those of you who don't know, this is Raider Ron. Look at that. and this is Dan Collins. So, Dan, why don't you get over here to your bench and have a seat, and I'm going to turn the camera over to Ron. So, the big thing is bark carving has become such a popular form of carving.
Yes, it has.
I mean, we've noticed since you first started teaching down there that a lot of the carvers, they weren't doing that well, and maybe not even having a lot of fun, but when they got into bark carving, it kind of changed everything for them. It's kind of like it brought life back into their carving. So when you first started at bark carving, how did you get into bark carving?
Well, I picked up a piece of bark at a carving show, and I wanted to try it. The thing I like about carving the bark is I'm creating something based on the shape of the bark rather than copying a pattern. Because if you carve a fish or a bird or something, it's got to look like a fish or a bird.
Right.
My pattern is the shape of the bark itself, so I'm creating from what's there.
Okay. So did it take you a long time to figure out how to look at a piece of bark and visualize what you can get out of it?
I take a piece and I start with the roof. I do mostly houses.
Okay.
And I start with the roof at the top and carve down, and I don't always know what I'm going to carve. I may have one idea in mind when I start, and as I continue to carve, it changes as I go.
Okay. Now the bark is cottonwood bark.
Cottonwood bark, yes.
And is there just one kind of cottonwood bark, or is there more?
There's actually 7 or 8 species of cottonwoods throughout North America. Some are better carving than others. I've noticed that bark from along the Canadian border, Montana, Minnesota, is firmer bark than what you get down from Arizona. Arizona bark is softer and easier to carve. The firmer bark holds detail better. So there's a trade-off.
Yeah. Have you carved much with the cottonwood bark here in Oregon? They call it black cottonwood, or something?
I actually have not found a decent bark tree in Oregon.
Really?
The bark in the Oregon trees is not thick enough. You have to have bark that's 3 to 5 inches thick to be able to carve it.
Okay, hand me that. So, just in case you aren't familiar with cottonwood bark, it's bark. So, as I understand it, one of the neat things about cottonwood bark is the grain, even though there is a grain, but it doesn't interfere with your carving. You can carve any direction you want. Is that right? More or less?
Well, carving bark, because bark is the dead cells of a tree, and the dead cells are pushed out. Bark on a cottonwood tree does not slough off like other trees, so it just builds. For every ring in the center of a tree, you can tell the age. There's a corresponding ring in the bark itself. And so from the bark, you can tell the age of this tree just from counting those rings.
Really?
But because the tree is larger diameter and the bark is not very much,
Right.
you have to use a
Magnifying glass.
well, more of a I lost my train of thought here.
That's right. One of those lab scopes.
Microscope.
Microscope.
A
Yeah.
microscope to count them.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So did you take a class when you first started?
I actually started carving on my own. I was carving other things, but I picked up a piece of bark at a carving show, and I took it to California with me at Arizona, and there was a group down there carving. A guy showed me the pointers how to get started, and so it really wasn't a class. It was just a group of carvers getting together.
Yeah. And
But later on, I did take a class with Rick Jensen.
Okay. And now, Rick Jensen is one of the premier bark carvers, or one of the kind of the founders of that art form.
Rick Jensen wrote the book.
Okay.
He wrote a book on bark carving.
And that's been kind of like the Bible, in a sense.
Yeah, he takes it step by step in carving a piece. Plus, in his book, he has also some photos of, like a gallery type thing.
Right.
Jack Williams was partner in writing this book.
Okay. So, Dan teaches bark carving at the wood carving place, and I think we started, 2 or 3 years ago with the first class?
Yeah, it's been probably a little longer than that.
Yeah. So it's become probably the most favorite medium, material-wise, that we've got down there. And so what Dan does is he brings down a whole selection of carvings like we've got here, more to inspire the students and try to visualize what they're going to do with their piece of wood. And that seems to be the hardest part. Once you make that decision, then it's not straightforward, but it's easier, once you have a vision. So Dan is a very good instructor and has really worked well with some of the carvers who can't work without a plan. So this is kind of carving without a plan, so to speak. Dan's a professional carver, travels to shows, mostly in the west area, right?
Yes.
Western area. This is, kind of a mini exhibit of what you might find in their booth at the art shows that they go to. So, if someone were going to start out bark carving, what kind of tools do they need to start out with?
You can start out with just a knife.
Just a knife.
And I graduated into gouges as well. And you can get a lot of different tools. For instance, here's my carving knives here.
That's quite
These are knives and these are gouges, different ones. I use corks. My wife drinks a lot of wine. But I use corks to protect the knives to keep them sharp, basically.
And these are little saws like X-Acto might make a saw.
Yes.
Similar to this one, but mostly for like model making and so
Right.
forth. That's
Yes,
what
yes.
the saws are made for. So, wire brush for just cleanup work.
Yeah, polishing and cleanup.
Handy trick little light, magnetic.
It actually clamps onto a set of eyeglasses.
Oh, really? Okay. Cool. And how about your power tools? You use Dremel or
I
Fordham?
started out using Dremels, but I graduated up to an NSK. I happened to buy this at a craft show that was a gal that was quit carving, and I got a good buy on it. Bought it used.
Is that would that be considered an engraving tool?
I guess you could. It could be either one. It's variable speed, but I use it primarily for carving. And I use various diamond tips and bristle discs and things for
So these
my detail work.
These are all diamond bits.
Yes.
So it's a kind of a serious collection right there, huh?
It's getting full.
So these are micro tools.
Here's something you can get probably pretty reasonably from your dentist. And these are handy tools as well.
Dockyard. I think they closed down for a while, but I think someone picked it up and is now making these tools again. They're great little tools.
And then these are needle files. And I use those for open up windows. I drill with the Dremel or the NSK, and then I file the windows whether square or odd shaped.
So do you drill out the back first?
I do. I hollow out the back.
Okay.
And some of them, the larger ones, I can put lights in behind them.
Yeah. Didn't you build a lighthouse with
Yeah.
the
I
so
built-
it's in the round?
Yep.
So you take two pieces of bark and put them together with, and what do you use in between when you glue the pieces together?
Like a piece of cardboard.
Just a piece of cardboard and,
Like a cereal box or cracker box.
okay,
Use craft glue from school, craft glue.
okay,
It's because you're going to split it apart once you get the basic shape. Split it apart, glue it back together after you open up the windows.
Just split it. You put it in, soak it in water.
Briefly.
yeah. So that allows you to carve in the round. And the lighthouse that we've mentioned just is one of the ones that Ron did. So you got a light up in the light where the light's supposed to be, as well as, on the way up. So it's really,
And it's got a battery on the bottom and a little push button to turn
Right.
it on and off.
Yes.
so the reason I ask about this being a engraving tool is the size of it. Seemed like back in the day, we used a lot of pencil grinders, which was, barely that big a diameter right there, the entire grinder, but, real high speed, real easy control, and they were considered to be, you've seen them in the
Yeah, I have.
machining industry.
I have one in my box.
Yeah, they're fantastic tools, and this just feels right. You can do a lot of
Yes.
And it's
detail work. with
High
something.
RPM too, right?
Yeah, it's variable speed.
Yeah.
It's quieter than the Dremel tools.
So I mean, this is a lot easier to handle than say your basic Dremel.
Yes.
Okay, just because of the thickness.
Yes.
Okay. And so if someone wanted to try it, I mean, they might pick up a piece of bark that's even this small, but you can still do something pretty neat with a piece.
Some of my miniature bark carvings are magnets that you can put on your refrigerator, and they're quite small.
Yeah. And typically, you would plane off the back of it
Yes.
so that it'll lie flat, or flat against the wall, as the case may be. See, but if you're working on it like this, you don't want a rough surface on
And
it.
if you're doing one in the round, you want it perfectly flat,
That's
so the two pieces match.
so. Like these two, for instance, they theoretically could go together like that.
Here's one here. That's
Or,
put together.
yeah, there you go, perfect. See, this has got the
It's got the paper
cardboard
in the middle.
Yeah. That's correct. And your carving station, this is kind of a self-contained unit, right? It's got
Yes.
filters
Yes.
in there. So you can sit here and do your carving without breathing. You still use a respirator and everything,
Yes, you should.
Okay.
I don't always, especially on
but
the small projects.
supposed to.
Yeah, supposed to.
Right. And it's almost a must in your power carving, but especially, I'm not a bark carver, so I can't speak from experience, but it seems like there's a lot more dust
That is true.
generated with bark carving, so this is really important.
The majority of my carving is done with the hand tools, and I don't do as much with power carving.
Okay,
Because I don't like the dust to begin with.
okay. Now, how does this work with bark carving?
It can work with any kind of carving. It's a vise, and it fits odd shapes. It'll clamp any kind of an odd shape there is.
So if you were carving on this, you'd get rid of these?
Yeah, or you could put it in
Oh, in there?
in here like
Oh,
this.
okay.
And you
It was
can,
at the Brookings show in Lincoln City, rather.
yeah, they sold them.
Is that where they're at?
Yeah.
So,
And you can also swing it, pivot it, work it from different angles.
yeah, that's great. Pine knot.
That is a pine knot.
That's a big pine knot.
Tell us the story on him.
A friend of mine does those. I don't do those because they primarily take power tools. That's actually, his name's Wilbur.
The Whiz?
Yeah,
The Whiz.
the Wiz.
The Whiz, correct me if I'm wrong, used to manage the burro factory out in
Oh.
Kirby.
Yeah, Gary. His name's Gary. He didn't do that, no.
Okay. But the Whiz was was kind of a local character in the Grants Pass, Oregon area, in that he used to teach pine knot carving out there every Saturday.
Yeah.
Well, probably for 10, 15 years, something like that. And at some point, somebody started calling him the Whiz, so the name just kind of stuck. That's always the first person I think of when somebody say, "Yeah, well, somebody taught me, or did
Yeah,
this," but that's very good. Well, Ron, let's get some shots of this, and maybe Dan, you can go left or right and give us a little information on each one of those. And these are all available from Dan, and we'll put information on the end of this video where you can get a hold of him. So, okay.
I don't really have anything information on each one. I usually start when I carve, start at the top and carve a roof first. And I take a piece, you take one like this here. I'll take about a third of the bark and carve the roof, a third, and carve the main body, and then I do the base.
Okay.
And whatever the shape of the bark is, that's what I do.
And where does the color come from?
The color is a finish. It's a shoe cream finish, and I use red, black, and green, and natural color.
Okay.
The natural color is a clear.
It's actually white, cream color, but it dries clear.
So when you go to show, this is basically what people would see as a bigger version of this
Yes.
display. So do you do classes in other places other than the wood carving place?
Just the wood carving place is where I teach.
Okay.
And depending on the shape of the bark, I'll incorporate some trees, tree roots, branches, steps and ladders, all kinds of different things, whatever seems to fit.
I don't know if you, for you viewers anyway, let's look at this guy right here. So you've got a staircase that's winding up here, going to a door, another staircase going up here to a door. Rocks, I guess you have to climb up to go to this door. Crazy looking windows. And look at the shingles, siding on here, and shingles on the roof. And then down here you have a ladder. Another set of winding steps that go down. So the beauty of bark carving is that you can, whatever your whimsy is, you can create it in bark. And Dan is just phenomenal when it comes to these whimsical shapes. And it's become a very popular thing for the kids too, because they all seem to have hobbits on their mind. And so they develop a little hobbit house. Like these. Here's a. Yeah. No, this is. I guess the big thing about it is that bark carving is just fun. Yeah.
I enjoy it,
Um,
basically because I'm creating.
yeah. And it's not a tremendous investment.
Well, you can,
Well,
with your tools.
like all
and
things.
you know.
Right. But if somebody wants to get started and they've got a set of beginner palm tools or just a few palm tools and a knife, you know, getting a little chunk of bark, which is going to cost somewhere around the $12 a pound, but of course a little piece like this, we're talking ounces, so you know, it's all relative. Now, if you got a pound, it might be a lot bigger. So from that point of view, doesn't take up a lot of space, doesn't take up a lot of tool investment to get started in it. You can do it all with a knife, like Dan said. And it's just a, you know, a fantastic variation of carving. And this is, if not the best, some of the best I've ever seen. And so if you want more, more information, you can contact Dan about his carvings, where shows are, and whether or not he'd be interested in visiting your club or your group and doing a bark carving class. So for Raider Ron and myself, and Dan Collins, we're going to sign off, and we'll see you hopefully on the next road trip. So see you later. Don't forget to subscribe, thumbs up,